Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. So let's go deeper on President Donald Trump's proposed tariffs today. 25% on all steel and aluminum imports into the United States, including from Canada and Mexico. So let's bring in CBS News business contributor Javier David. Javier, nice to have you with us on the stream once again. The president believes these tariffs will help U.S. steel producers. What's the logic here?
Well, the logic is you're trying to prevent, this is a long-standing problem. The idea that companies or countries rather will sort of quote unquote dump cheaper goods into the United States. So the best way to avoid that is to make those goods more expensive and force U.S. producers to use U.S. made goods. Now, the problem with that is these things that we get from overseas sometimes just are cheaper and more cost effective to import. And using U.S. steel or U.S. made exclusively products is sometimes easier said than done. So the president's idea is, hey, let's make it more expensive for these countries to drop these things or these particular goods or services into our country, and therefore will force American producers to do more with American goods.
Okay, so Trump also pledged to announce these so-called reciprocal tariffs this week. We're hearing a lot about reciprocal tariffs. So is it an oversimplification to say that a reciprocal tariff is essentially that if a country taxes us, we just tax them right back the same amount? And then I guess my larger question is, how is this not a trade war?
Well, yeah, it is exactly what the name implies. It's reciprocity. If you charge us, we charge you, and vice versa. It is, in fact, if not by name, certainly a trade war, because basically the conflict is about what is coming in one country and what's going into another, how much that costs, and basically, ultimately, who pays the price. And that is, I think, ultimately what will happen is consumers will pay the price because companies that are going to be paying more will pass it along to them.
Okay, so when could consumers start seeing the impacts of this, whether good or bad?
Look, there's a lag. It won't happen right away, but I'd say within a month or so, you will see certain goods getting more expensive. I think the problem with this whole debate, whether you want to call it a trade war or a tariffs or reciprocity or whatever, is it makes it really difficult for companies to plan what they're going to charge and what they are willing to pay for certain things. So they're going to be scrambling, trying to figure it all out. So at some point, the president might decide to change his mind and roll these tariffs back. But the impact will already be felt in the system because companies will have to adjust and they will have to sort of account for what is going to cost them more and how much of that consumers are going to be forced to eat.
Of course, China is such a huge player, so I want to drill down on China just a little bit. They hit back on Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods with their own tariffs on U.S. goods taking effect today. A 15% tariff on all imports of U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas. A 10% tariff on American crude oil, agricultural machinery, large engine cars. So before the election, economists said that there could be a negative effect for the U.S. consumer. When you look at all of the China tariffs on U.S. goods now in effect, where do you think the rubber is going to really hit the road first in any of those sectors?
Primarily in the energy sector, you're probably going to be paying more at the pump. You'll see it because there is, despite the fact that the United States is this massive exporter of energy now, we've really flipped the energy paradigm. At the pump will be the biggest way to see it. And also, like, we're in winter, so we're using more natural gas to the extent that that is imported, that you'll see it there as well on your bills.
Okay, so as we watch dollars and cents, we are literally watching cents today. Another headline here. The president ordering the U.S. Treasury to stop minting new pennies. Walk us through the why here.
This has been a really big debate for a while. So the short answer is it costs the U.S. Mint more to create pennies than it does to actually just disseminate and use them. And in fact, the U.S. Mint lost almost $180 million in 2023 producing pennies. And the big part of the reason why is we're more of a cashless society. People aren't necessarily dealing in pennies when they get them. You toss them out because they don't really amount to anything, or you put them in a jar and kind of save them for a rainy day, as the graphic is showing. So the idea is there's so little of it in circulation and people just throw them away or kind of stick them away or hoard them it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to continue to pass this along. And we haven't even gotten into the fact that the what we use to make pennies is traded on open markets, and those prices are more expensive, the commodities market.
Well, and that also opened up the conversation that it's now more expensive to create a nickel than a nickel costs, too. Do you see that this could be the beginning of looking at currency in general?
Yeah, I mean, it really does sort of argue whether or not we need to rethink the whole paradigm of what are dollars and cents. Are we going to redenominate certain things? Are we just not going to use certain types of money or certain types of currency? It just, again, because we charge so much and we use plastic or the whole cashless society idea that's been bandied about. The end result is people just don't use these smaller denominations, but you're still producing them and they don't actually make them back into circulation. So what do you do about that?
Well, arguably, this headline really jumped ahead of another headline that I think a lot of people are concerned about today, and that is the fact that the president halted the work of a government agency that is meant to protect the American consumer. We're talking about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Their mission baked right into their title. Elon Musk posted on X about the agency with a rest in peace symbol. This is super important. What's behind this?
Yeah, so the CFPB is exactly what the name implies. It is an agency that was created in the last several years to protect consumers and sort of argue for their interests. They usually go after banks over fees. They go after credit cards over fees. A lot of their bailiwick has to do with making sure that the consumer is not eating a lot of charges that some view unfairly. But of course, the president and some in his camp do believe that there's been an element of overreach, that maybe this agency has a little bit too much power, it's unaccountable. They force, again, companies to act, and usually it's basically by doing a bully pulpit. So there are some virtues in what they do, and everyone wants to make sure the consumers are safe and not getting charged money that they don't necessarily have or that they shouldn't have to pay. But at the end of the day, like there's all this question. If you're looking at the government holistically, what it spends, how much power it should have, what sort of power it should mete out, the CFPB is kind of right in the crosshairs of that whole discussion.
All right, so for now, it's just a work from home situation, a work stoppage, and a reevaluate and wait and see. We appreciate so much you're talking to us today. So many headlines to keep track of, and it's only Monday.